Rahman Talk Show. So today we have Mr. Zabir Rahman with us. Mr. Rahman is a writer and an editor. He is also associated with Stonebank Singapore. One of his many interests is cryptocurrencies. So let's hear from Mr. Rahman. Mr. Rahman, thank you for joining us on this show.
Thank you for having me on board.
Thank you, Mr. Rahman. So can you please tell us about cryptocurrency in a layman's language, or rather the manner in which you would explain it to a child?
Okay, good question, Anmol. So cryptocurrencies seem to have gained in dominance over the last year a whole lot. I think in the past few months, those of us who watch cricket, you will have noticed that IPL was running a lot of crypto ads. So while the stadiums were devoid of any people, what definitely came to the limelight, or what grabbed the limelight, was definitely companies like CoinSwitch, WazirX, Kuber. So if you're wondering what these companies really are, they are the equivalent of a stock exchange. Okay? So just as you have stocks, which is basically the share of a particular company, likewise you have crypto assets. So the term cryptocurrency is a bit misleading. The correct term to describe this whole portfolio of assets would be crypto assets. So coming back to your question, if I was to explain it simply, consider the example of the internet. In 1994, when I was probably just about 8 years old, at that time we had just heard that there's something called the internet coming into being. We learned that there was something called email, and cyber cafes in that era would advertise saying internet available, along with Yahoo, Google and Hotmail, which was a very common one then. So for most of us who are uninitiated, we thought Hotmail and the internet and Hotmail and Google were all exclusive entities. It wasn't. The underlying platform was the internet. On the internet were built all these companies and platforms like a Google or a Hotmail, or let's say for instance a Facebook or even an Instagram. Okay. Likewise, in the case of crypto assets, the underlying platform is blockchain. So you have blockchain at its foundation, and on this blockchain are built a whole host of applications. Terms that you use in this case are called dApps or HAPS. So dApps are decentralized applications, HAPS being holochain applications. But anyway, more specifically, the first crypto asset that gained popularity was Bitcoin. It was founded right after the global financial crisis of 2008. At the time, a person called Satoshi Nakamoto, whose identity is actually not revealed, was the one who founded blockchain and the asset that ran on it called Bitcoin. So that's the most popular one. In the years since, there are now over 8,400 crypto companies around the world. In the case of India, the most popular crypto company is Matic. Earlier they went by the name Polygon, and only recently they were in the news because Matic, or the founders of Matic, facilitated the largest donation that India received amid COVID-19.
So that's interesting. Two takeaways from this would be cryptocurrency is a misleading term. It is not a currency, it is an asset.
Yes.
And the other would be blockchain. Will it be right to call blockchain an advanced version of the internet?
Absolutely. So just as, let's say for instance, if you're using an Android phone or an iOS, which is an Apple phone, you will find that every so often there is an update. Right?
Yes.
Likewise, blockchain is the successor to the internet. So in the year 1994, to go back to the same reference I used earlier, at that time a lot of skeptics said that the internet was just a fad, that it would come and go. That was one of the reasons that led to the dot-com bust of 1999-2000, when a lot of internet companies went belly up. But that was only a temporary event. In the years since, the companies that have grown exponentially in the shortest span of time have almost always been a technology company. So these have been powered by the internet, and the same skeptics who were initially doubtful of the internet today are investors or have completely bought into this idea. Likewise, with blockchain too, there is a lot of initial hesitation, especially from governments who seem to always espouse the idea that blockchain is only going to be used by criminal elements. Well, to just give you a simple idea, aren't the law or can fiat currency also not be used for criminal transactions? And there's something that has been used from the 8th century. It's called the Hawala system, which guarantees both sender and receiver even more anonymity than blockchain. So if you're looking at blockchain being used for crypto assets or for crypto purchases, I think we had it figured out already in the 8th century. So it is nothing new in terms of using it for criminal gains.
So this entire blockchain technology and the crypto asset, this is a kind of a technological advancement. Then yet the government is skeptical of this. Is it solely because of the criminal activities that they're apprehensive about, or there's something more for the government?
So again, a very interesting question, Anmol. As I see it, yes, the foremost reason why governments are skeptical about is they say that it is going to be used for criminal reasons. And I will not discredit that viewpoint entirely. Yes, there is some amount of truth to it. Even in the case of the US, which is accepting of crypto, they have a lot of crypto checks and balances in place. They even have an entire department of crypto forensics, which allow you to trace transactions that were made fraudulently on any blockchain. But with that said, hackers, and often hackers that go by the group called Anonymous, have held various public sector units to ransom. They've held several transit systems to ransom, and the demand has always been in the form of Bitcoin. But that is just one example of it. I think for every element, even if it is the internet, I'm sure we are all aware that there is something called the dark web, where you can purchase spurious goods, you can buy an AK-47 if you wish, or you could perhaps buy any other contraband substance. But likewise, with the blockchain, the fact that it can be used by criminal elements, I would think, is only the tip of the iceberg. What irks governments, I feel, is the fact that cryptocurrencies will allow bypassing of the government. It will allow bypassing of federal or reserve banks entirely. So, to put it again in very simple terms, consider the Reserve Bank, or let's say of India, consider the government as middlemen. They're nothing but middlemen in the entire process. So, if I was to make a payment to Anmol, that payment will be routed via the Reserve Bank. Or if I am making an international payment, and let's say Anmol is based in New York, that is going to again get routed via the Reserve Bank, maybe go via the Federal Bank. Everyone, of course, takes a little commission because that is what we are all prone to do. And then Anmol receives it after a substantial transaction fee has been paid for. But in case of transacting over the blockchain, I can maybe send a Bitcoin, I can send you Ethereum over this network in a matter of seconds without any of these middlemen being involved. So why would any person who is already holding power by way of controlling assets like the Reserve Bank or being a member of the government want to give up his or her power? He will always want to safeguard, he will always want to protect that power. So if your authority is being threatened, I'm sure you're going to find enough reasons to say this particular policy should be banned, that cryptocurrencies should receive a blanket ban. So as I see it, it's only a matter of time before regulatory agencies also then or see more reason on the advantages. Like I'll give you another quick reason here. Up until May 2021, the government of India seemed to have a very hostile approach to it. And going by my response to the last question, I mentioned about India receiving one massive donation amid COVID-19. Well, that one donation was received from one individual alone. In crypto terms, it was the equivalent of about $1 billion. The donor's name is Vitalik Buterin. Vitalik is the founder of the second most popular cryptocurrency, which is called Ethereum. So Vitalik made a contribution of $1 billion in a token known as Shiba Inu. Okay? So a lot of people actually bought the Shiba Inu right before thinking that they're going to double their money. Didn't quite happen because immediately after the contribution was made, Shiba Inu's value fell by half. But when this Shiba Inu tokens were converted it amounted to a still staggering 300 million or so. So when one donation of $300 million comes in, you immediately are going to be influenced by it. So ever since that happened, and ever since India received the donation, the government seems to be adopting a slightly more softer stance. And I think sometime at the end of this month or the next, the finance minister says that she is going to introduce a regulatory framework to govern cryptocurrencies.
So although the government are skeptical of this, yet after the donation they are considering maybe with restrictions the use of crypto assets in India or transactions in crypto assets in India, is it? So this is the viewpoint of the government. Can you please tell us something about what the private investors think about it? They are usually their opinions are always contradictory to the government.
Yes, absolutely. So in the Indian crypto scenario, of course, the government's viewpoints are just about unfolding. To give you on the private sector part of it, so last year at this time, there were approximately just about 6 to 8 million people from India invested in crypto. So from a population of 1.3 billion, we had just about 6 to 8 million people in crypto. But as of today, there are approximately 15 million Indians. So within a year, there has been a jump of over 100% across all these crypto exchanges in India. Why? Because the returns have been phenomenal. People have begun understanding what crypto assets are. Now, here again, there's a very interesting trend. People who have bought into crypto typically tend to be of a younger subset. So if you look at the world's most renowned investor, Warren Buffett, he is absolutely against crypto. Simple reason, the old man does not understand it, right? But to give you another example of somebody who was earlier hostile and is now all gung-ho, is the CEO of a company or of a banking organization called JP Morgan. So JP Morgan CEO in 2017 made a comment that crypto is entirely a fraudulent investment. I will not encourage any of my clients to get into it. But the same CEO in 2021 says, we have a crypto fund now for our high net worth individuals. We have a dedicated Bitcoin fund for our interested clients to invest in. So in a matter of 4 years, the sun now seems to be rising from the west for JP Morgan.
So crypto assets, as it is gaining popularity, there's enough discussion coming up with regards to this. One of the discussions is about its environmental impact because of the mining activities undertaken.
Yes.
So could you please share something about that?
Okay. So that's again a really interesting one. So crypto mining. Okay, so unlike now, when you say environmental impact, are we aware of where iron ore, steel, bauxite, copper, where does all of it come from?
Mines.
From mines, right? Diamond, the gold, it all comes from mines. And mining of a physical kind is not only destroying the environment, but there's a huge amount of energy that goes into it. In comparison, crypto mining needs CPUs, the kind that you see on a desktop or attached to a desktop. It needs CPUs. You can also use maybe a PlayStation console or any such thing that has high processing speed. So even if you have a smartphone with unused capacity, it can be used for mining. Now, the bulk of mining is actually using renewable sources of energy, which is not highlighted. So they're using hydropower, they're using solar power, they're using wind power. For instance, Canada is one of the leaders where mining is happening almost entirely based on renewable sources of energy. Most recently, and why people actually question the environmental impact of it is because Elon Musk tweeted that we are only going to begin accepting Bitcoin once again once Bitcoin miners begin using more eco-friendly ways. But here's a quick question. The spacecraft that Elon Musk is about to blast off into space probably uses all of that crypto mining energy put together in one single launch. So when we're talking about environmental impact, sometimes we have to take it with a pinch of salt.
Yes, absolutely. I'm sure some of our audience might be wondering that if it is completely digital with blockchain technology, where does the entire thing about mining come in? What does mining have to do with this?
Okay, so mining in the crypto, from the crypto perspective, actually means a complex set of mathematical puzzles that a computer must solve. So each time it solves one particular problem, you have one, let's say, Bitcoin come into the ecosystem. So in case of Bitcoin, there can only ever be 21 million Bitcoins. And going by estimates, going by the rate of mining, the last ever Bitcoin will only be mined perhaps in the year 2140. So that's approximately 120 years from now. But again, to give you perspective, approximately 18 million Bitcoins have already been mined. So to reiterate what crypto mining is, it is basically the solving of a complex mathematical problem. So, and even the founders of several crypto assets, right, they are actually mathematicians. For instance, one of the very popular ones called Cardano. Cardano's founder is a person called Charles Hodgkinson or Hodgkinson, I'm not very sure. But Cardano's listing name on crypto exchanges goes by ADA, ADA. Okay? ADA comes from a historical maths wizard called Ada Lovelace. So they are basically academics, and which is why I also say that cryptocurrencies or crypto assets are not out to hoodwink people. These are organizations that have been founded by people who couldn't care less about driving a Lamborghini, living in a 10-bedroom mansion, or having a private jet. No, you find the bulk of them are wearing the same t-shirt, they're wearing the same pair of jeans. They want to solve more pressing problems in society. They're not interested in about the material side of things. And which is why I think crypto assets, cryptocurrencies, crypto tokens, as you may term them, are based on trust, are based on something that is more meaningful than simply money alone.
Thank you, Mr. Rahman, for sharing your insights and your knowledge about these crypto assets. Because I'm sure most of us here, including my own self, were not as aware as we are now after this video. So we once again thank you, Mr. Rahman, for joining us on this show, and thank you our audience for being patient and tuning into this video. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.